There is a city in the middle of the Arabian desert where the birthplace of Islam still breathes in every stone, every law, every conversation, every silence. A city where the call to prayer does not just echo, it commands. Where the religion is not something you practice on Sundays or Fridays. It is the air itself, the law itself, the identity itself. I was born in that city, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, the heart of the Muslim world, the land of the two holy mosques, the place where Islam began, and where, according to everyone I ever knew, Islam would reign until the end of time. And I left it. Not just the city, the faith. I am not supposed to exist. A Saudi woman who left Islam. In the eyes of my country, I am an impossibility, an aberration, a ghost. The law says apostasy is punishable by death. The culture says I am worse than dead. I am a shame, a stain, an erasure. My name has been removed from my family. My photographs have been taken down from the walls of my childhood home. In the eyes of the people who raised me, I was never born. But I am here. I am alive. And I have a story that I believe was meant to be told. My name is Noura. I am 26 years old. And this is the story of how a girl who grew up in a gilded cage discovered that the cage had a door, and the door led to a garden she never knew existed. Let me tell you about Riyadh. Not the Riyadh you see in the news. The oil wealth, the skyscrapers, the Vision 2030 modernization projects. I want to tell you about the Riyadh I grew up in. The private Riyadh. The Riyadh behind the walls. My family was wealthy. Not obscenely wealthy like the royal family, but comfortable. Upper middle class. My father, Sultan, was a mid-level executive at a petroleum company. He drove a nice car, wore expensive watches, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of a man who had done well. He was devout, not in a scholarly way, not like an imam or a cleric, but in the cultural way that most Saudi men are devout. Islam was the frame around everything. It was the reason we ate what we ate, dressed how we dressed, spoke how we spoke, thought how we thought. My mother, Reem, was a homemaker. She was beautiful, educated. She had a university degree in literature, and completely confined. She managed the household, raised 4 children, hosted gatherings for other women, and navigated the elaborate social hierarchy of Saudi female society. She was gracious and poised and warm, and she lived her entire life within a perimeter defined by her husband, her family, and her religion. I have 2 older brothers, Faisal and Khalid, and a younger sister, Lama. The boys were treated like princes. They had freedom, mobility, authority. They came and went as they pleased. They studied abroad. They had opinions, and they expressed them. They were men. Lama and I were something else. We were treasures. That is the word they used. Treasures to be protected, pearls to be guarded, gems to be kept in a safe. The language sounds beautiful. The reality was suffocating. From the time I was old enough to understand anything, I understood this. I was a woman, and that meant my life had boundaries. Not suggestions, not guidelines. Boundaries. Hard, non-negotiable boundaries enforced by religion, by culture, by law, and by the men in my family. I wore the abaya, the long black cloak, from the age of 10. I wore the niqab, the face veil, from the age of 13. I could not leave the house without a male guardian. I could not drive until the law changed when I was already an adult. I could not travel without permission. I could not make major decisions about my own life, education, career, marriage, without the approval of a male relative. I want to be careful here, because I know that many people will hear this and think, that sounds terrible. And in many ways it was. But it was also normal. It was my normal. You do not question the cage when you have never seen the sky. You do not miss freedom when you have never had it. You simply exist within the boundaries, and you assume that the boundaries are natural, God-given, eternal, and there was love within those boundaries. My parents loved me. My mother was tender and affectionate. Even my father, in his distant, patriarchal way, loved me. He bought me books. He praised my grades. He told me I was smart, which was unusual for a Saudi father of his generation. The cage was gilded. The walls were decorated with love and comfort and material abundance. But a gilded cage is still a cage. I first felt the bars when I was about 15. It was a small moment, nothing dramatic. I was sitting in my room reading a novel. I loved reading. It was my escape, my window to worlds I could not visit. And I came across a passage about a woman traveling alone through Europe. Just a woman, on a train, looking out the window at mountains and rivers and villages, going wherever she wanted, answering to no one. And something inside me ached, a deep, nameless ache. Not envy exactly, more like recognition. Like I was reading about something I had always wanted but never knew I wanted. The ability to move freely, to choose, to exist in the world as a full, autonomous person, not as someone's treasure, someone's pearl, someone's responsibility. I closed the book and looked around my room. My beautiful room with its expensive furniture and its soft carpet and its window that looked out onto a walled garden. And for the first time I thought, is this all there is? That question would follow me for the next decade. I did everything right. I want you to understand that. I was not a rebel. I was not a troublemaker. I was the perfect Saudi girl. I memorized Quran. I prayed 5 times a day. I fasted during Ramadan with enthusiasm. I wore my abaya and niqab without complaint. I lowered my gaze around men who were not family. I studied hard. I was obedient. I was quiet. I was good. At university, King Saud University in Riyadh, the women's campus, of course, completely segregated from the men, I studied information technology. It was a practical choice. My father approved. Technology was the future, he said, and even women would need to understand it. I was good at it, and I found that the logic of programming appealed to something in my mind that craved order and clarity. But the restlessness was growing. Not outwardly. Outwardly, I was as calm and compliant as ever. But internally, something was shifting. It started with questions that seemed innocent, but were, in retrospect, the first tremors of an earthquake. Why could I not drive? The official religious justification had been that it would lead to moral corruption. But women in every other country drove without the world ending. Were Saudi women uniquely susceptible to moral corruption? That seemed unlikely. Why did my testimony in court count as half of a man's? The Quran says this explicitly. 2 women equal 1 man as witnesses. The explanation I was given was that women are more emotional and forgetful. But I was not more emotional or forgetful than my brothers. In fact, I consistently outperformed them academically. So why did my word count for less? Why was my body considered aura, something that must be concealed because it provokes desire? Why was it my responsibility to manage men's desires by hiding myself? Why was I wrapped in black cloth from head to toe while men walked freely in white thobes with their faces exposed to the sun? These questions were not new. Women in Saudi Arabia have asked them for generations. But I was asking them with a new intensity, a new urgency, like someone pressing on a bruise to see how deep it goes. The deeper I pressed, the more I found that the answers given by Islamic scholars were not satisfying. Because Allah says so. Because the Prophet ordained it. Because this is the natural order. These were not answers. They were full stops. They ended conversation instead of opening it. They silenced inquiry instead of welcoming it. I began to feel that my religion, the religion I had devoted my entire life to, did not want me to think. It wanted me to submit. And for the first time, I wondered if submission and love were really the same thing. The internet changed everything, as it does for so many of us. In Saudi Arabia, the internet is heavily filtered. Websites deemed immoral, political, or religiously subversive are blocked. But VPNs are widely used, especially among young people. And with a VPN, the entire world opens up. I started exploring, not with any specific destination in mind. I was just curious. I watched documentaries. I read articles. I followed discussions on forums. I consumed information the way someone who has been on a strict diet consumes food at a buffet, hungrily, recklessly, unable to stop. At some point, I stumbled onto testimonies of ex-Muslims. Not just any ex-Muslims. Women. Saudi women. Iranian women. Pakistani women. Somali women. Women who had left Islam and were living new lives. Some had become atheists. Some had become agnostics. Some had become Christians. I watched these testimonies with a mixture of fascination and horror. Fascination because these women were saying things I had felt, but never dared to articulate. Horror because what they were doing, publicly renouncing Islam, was, in my world, the equivalent of stepping off a cliff. One testimony in particular struck me. A young Saudi woman, a few years older than me, who had converted to Christianity. She spoke in Arabic, her face blurred for safety. She talked about her journey, the questions, the doubts, the discovery of the Bible, the encounter with Jesus. But the part that caught my attention was when she described what it felt like to be loved by God. She said, In Islam, I was always afraid of hellfire, afraid of not being good enough, afraid of making a mistake. My relationship with Allah was built on fear. When I found Jesus, the fear left. Not because there was nothing to be afraid of, but because I discovered that perfect love casts out fear. I was loved, not for what I did, for who I was. And that love was so big, so complete, so unconditional, that there was no room left for fear. I paused the video. I sat very still. My heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat, because she had just described my exact experience. The fear, the constant low-grade fear that defined my relationship with God. The fear of hellfire, the fear of not praying correctly, the fear of accidentally saying something blasphemous, the fear of being weighed on the scales of judgment and found wanting. Fear, fear, fear. My faith was built on fear the way a house is built on a foundation. Remove the fear, and there was nothing left. And here was this woman, a Saudi woman like me, saying that she had found a love that removed the fear, that there was a God who loved first and asked questions later, that the foundation did not have to be fear. It could be love. I did not become a Christian that night, but that night was the night the crack appeared, the hairline fracture in the wall that had surrounded me my entire life. It was tiny, barely visible, but it was there, and like all cracks, it would only grow. For the next 2 years, I lived inside the crack. That is the best way I can describe it. On one side was my old life, the abaya, the prayers, the obedience, the gilded cage. On the other side was something I could not yet see but could feel, the way you feel the warmth of a fire through a closed door. I began reading about Christianity, secretly, obsessively, fearfully. I used my phone with a VPN, always in private browsing mode, always deleting my history, always aware that in Saudi Arabia, the wrong search history could end your life. I found the Bible online in Arabic. I started reading the Gospels, and from the very first pages, I felt something that I can only describe as recognition. Not the recognition of something familiar, the recognition of something true, like hearing a note of music that your soul has been humming your entire life without knowing the melody. The Gospels were not what I had been told they were. I had been taught that the Bible was corrupted, unreliable, a distortion of God's original message. But the words I was reading did not feel corrupted. They felt luminous. They felt like sunrise after a very long night. I read the Sermon on the Mount, and I was stunned. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. These were not the words of a political leader or a military commander or a lawgiver. These were the words of someone who saw the world inside out, who valued weakness over strength, mercy over justice, love over law. I read the parables, and I was moved. The Good Samaritan, who helped a stranger of a different ethnicity when the religious leaders walked past. The prodigal son, whose father ran to meet him even after he had squandered everything. The lost sheep, where the shepherd left 99 safe sheep to find the one that was lost. Each parable was a small revolution, overturning everything I had been taught about how God operates. And I read about Jesus himself, his life, his words, his actions, his death, his resurrection, and I fell in love. I do not use that word lightly. I am not being sentimental or poetic. I mean it literally. I fell in love with Jesus Christ, not as a theological proposition, not as a historical figure, as a person. A real, breathing, walking, touching, healing, dying, rising person who looked at broken people and did not see brokenness. He saw belovedness. He touched lepers. In my culture, untouchable people were avoided. Jesus touched them. He spoke to women as equals. In my culture, women were treasures to be guarded. Jesus treated them as people to be respected. He forgave sinners. In my culture, sinners were condemned and shamed. Jesus forgave them and gave them new names. He died for his enemies. In my culture, enemies were fought and defeated. Jesus died for his. This was not the God I had been taught about. The God I had been taught about was distant, sovereign, inscrutable, and terrifying. The God I was discovering in the pages of the Bible was close, intimate, sacrificial, and beautiful. And the more I read, the more I realized that I was not just reading a book. I was meeting someone who had been waiting for me on the other side of the crack in the wall, patient and kind, letting me come at my own pace, never forcing, never pressuring, simply being there. I want to tell you about the night everything crystallized. I was 23. It was a Thursday night. My family had gone to bed. The house was silent, that particular Saudi silence that settles over a compound after the last prayer, when the desert night wraps around everything like a dark blanket. I was in my room, reading the Gospel of John on my phone. I had reached chapter 4, the story of the Samaritan woman at the well, a woman who was an outsider, a social outcast, someone the religious establishment rejected, and Jesus sought her out. He did not avoid her. He did not condemn her. He sat down at the well and waited for her. And when she came, he offered her living water, water that would satisfy her thirst forever. I set my phone down. I turned off the light. I sat in the dark, on my bed, in my room in my father's house in Riyadh, in the heart of the Arabian Peninsula, in the birthplace of Islam, and I felt my entire life converging on a single point, the emptiness I had felt since I was 15, the questions I had been asking for years, the fear that had been the foundation of my faith, the cage I had been living in, the crack in the wall, the 2 years of secret reading. All of it, every moment, every doubt, every ache, had been leading here. I slid off my bed and onto the floor. I knelt, not facing Mecca, not performing salat. I knelt like a child, hands open, face upturned, heart exposed, and I spoke to Jesus, out loud, in Arabic, in a whisper so quiet that even the walls could not hear. I said, "I am the woman at the well. I have been thirsty my whole life. Everyone has given me water that does not last. Religion gave me water that does not last. Rules gave me water that does not last. Obedience gave me water that does not last. I am still thirsty, and I am so tired of being thirsty." I paused, breathed. "If you are real, if you are who you say you are, give me the living water. Fill me. Quench the thirst that nothing else has been able to quench. I do not care what it costs me. I do not care what I lose. I just want to stop being thirsty." What happened next is difficult to put into words. Language was not designed for moments like these, but I will try. The room filled with something. Not light. The room was still dark. Not sound. The room was still silent. But something. A density. A thickness. As if the air itself had become saturated with a presence that was both overwhelming and gentle at the same time. And I felt, not heard, not saw, but felt, a response. Not words exactly, but a communication that was more precise than words. It was as if someone was pouring warm water into the center of my chest, slowly, steadily, filling every empty space, every hollow chamber, every aching void that had been there for as long as I could remember. The thirst did not just diminish, it vanished, like it had never existed. In its place was a fullness so complete that I could barely contain it. I was crying. Of course I was crying. I had been empty for 23 years, and now I was full. The tears were overflow. The cup was running over. I stayed on the floor for a long time. When I finally stood up, the room was the same. My bed, my desk, my books, my abaya hanging on the back of the door. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. I looked at the abaya and I thought, I do not have to wear this because God demands it. I do not have to hide because God requires it. God does not want me covered and silent and invisible. God made me. God sees me. God loves me. Not the version of me that is wrapped in black cloth. Me. The real me. The me that thinks and questions and aches and hopes and dreams and laughs. I was not free. Not yet. Not physically. I was still in Saudi Arabia. Still in my father's house. Still subject to the same laws and customs. But I was free inside. In the deepest, most essential part of my being, I was free. And no abaya, no niqab, no law, no threat, no punishment could reach that freedom, because it was not given by the world. It was given by God. I want to pause here and speak directly to any woman watching this, wherever you are, whatever your religion or background. If you have ever been told that your body is something to hide, that your voice is something to suppress, that your thoughts are less valuable than a man's thoughts, that your worth is measured by your obedience, I want you to know that those are lies. Beautiful, well-packaged, culturally endorsed lies, but lies. You are not a treasure to be locked away. You are a person to be set free. And the God who made you, the real God, the God I met on the floor of my bedroom, he does not want you caged. He wants you alive, fully, gloriously, unapologetically alive. If that message resonates with you, leave a comment, share this video, subscribe to this channel. because this is a space where we tell the truth about what it means to be free, and the world needs more spaces like that. Now, let me tell you what happened after that night. Living as a secret Christian in Saudi Arabia is unlike being a secret Christian anywhere else on earth, and I do not say that to diminish the struggles of believers in Iran or Egypt or Pakistan. Every persecution is real and every sacrifice is valid. But Saudi Arabia has a unique intensity, because Islam is not just the dominant religion. It is the state. It is the constitution. It is the legal system. It is the identity of the nation. To leave Islam in Saudi Arabia is to leave the country itself, even if you never physically depart. For 3 years, I lived the double life. I prayed 5 times a day. I faced Mecca. I moved my lips in Arabic recitation, but the words in my heart were directed to Jesus. I learned to pray 2 prayers simultaneously, the external Muslim prayer for the cameras and the internal Christian prayer for my soul. It was exhausting and dishonest and agonizing, and it was the only way to survive. I wore my abaya and niqab. I attended Islamic lectures. I participated in Quran study circles with other women. I fasted during Ramadan. I did everything that was expected of a devout Saudi woman. And behind it all, hidden in the encrypted corners of my phone, I had a Bible, a collection of worship songs, and a journal where I poured out my heart to a God that my country said did not exist the way I knew him. I had no one to talk to. This is the hardest part. In Iran, there are underground churches. In Egypt, there are Coptic Christians who can help. In Jordan, there are small communities. In Saudi Arabia, there is nothing. The Christian community is entirely foreign workers, Filipinos, Indians, Ethiopians, who worship in private compounds. They are tolerated as long as they do not evangelize. A Saudi Christian? That was an oxymoron. We simply did not exist, except we did. We existed in the shadows. We existed in the encrypted messages on apps that the government had not yet figured out how to monitor. We existed in the late-night conversations held in whispers, in the careful, coded language of people who knew that the wrong word could mean prison, or worse. I found them, or rather, they found me. Through an online forum for ex-Muslims, I connected with a small network of Saudi Christians. There were fewer than a dozen of us. We never met in person. The risk was too great. But we communicated through encrypted apps. We shared Bible passages. We prayed for each other. We held each other up through the digital ether, invisible hands reaching across the vast Saudi landscape, connecting believers who could not see each other's faces, but could feel each other's faith. One of these connections was a woman I will call Hanan. She was a few years older than me, from Jeddah, and she had been a secret Christian for 5 years. Hanan became my mentor, my friend, my sister. We talked every day, sometimes for hours. She taught me things I could not learn from reading alone: how to pray conversationally, how to worship in silence, how to find God's presence in the middle of a reality that denied his existence. Hanan told me something I will never forget. She said, "Noura, the desert is not our punishment. It is our teacher. God sent Moses into the desert. He sent Elijah into the desert. He sent Jesus into the desert. The desert strips away everything that is not essential. It teaches you to survive on God alone. We are in the desert, and God is enough." I held on to those words like a lifeline. There were moments during the double life that were almost absurd in their contradictions. I remember sitting in a women's Quran study circle at my mother's friend's house, surrounded by a dozen women in black abayas, drinking tea and discussing a surah about the punishment of unbelievers in hellfire. And I was sitting there, an unbeliever by their definition, listening to them describe my supposed eternal destiny with casual certainty, as if they were discussing the weather. The kafir will drink boiling water. The skin will be burned and replaced so they can be burned again. There is no escape for those who reject Allah. I sat and sipped my tea and smiled and nodded, and felt the insanity of my situation wash over me. These were kind women, generous women, women who would give you their last dirham if you needed it. And they were describing, with perfect serenity, the eternal torture of anyone who believed what I believed. They did not know I was one of the kafir they were discussing. They did not know that the woman sitting cross-legged on the carpet, holding a teacup decorated with gold Arabic calligraphy, had given her heart to the very person their theology condemned. I also remember the nights. The Saudi nights are vast. The sky over Riyadh stretches forever, and when the city quiets down after the last prayer, there is a silence that is almost cosmic. I would lie in my bed and listen to that silence and talk to Jesus, not in formal prayers, in conversation. I would tell him about my day, about the Quran circle, about the fear, about the loneliness, about missing the version of my family that would love me if they knew the truth, instead of the version that would reject me. I would tell him everything, and in the silence, I would feel him listening, not responding in words, just listening, present, attentive, patient, like a friend who knows that sometimes what you need is not advice, but company. Those nighttime conversations kept me sane. They were the thread that connected me to reality when the double life threatened to pull me into madness, and they taught me something about prayer that I had never learned in Islam. Prayer is not a performance. It is not a ritual. It is not a set of prescribed words in a prescribed language at prescribed times. Prayer is simply being with God, honestly, vulnerably, without pretense, without costume, just you and the infinite love that holds you. I also want to tell you about the moments of unexpected beauty. One afternoon, I was walking through a shopping mall in Riyadh, covered as always, in my abaya and niqab, invisible, anonymous, and I passed a small bookshop. In the window, there was a display of calligraphy art. One piece caught my eye. It was a verse from the Quran, beautifully written in gold on a dark blue background. The verse was from Surah Al-Baqarah, "And your God is one God. There is no deity except him, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful." I stood there looking at that calligraphy, and I thought about how beautiful it was, and I thought about how the God I now knew, the God revealed in Jesus, was indeed entirely merciful, and especially merciful, more merciful than I had ever imagined when I was Muslim, because his mercy was not abstract or conditional. His mercy had a face, his mercy had hands, his mercy had scars, his mercy had walked on earth and touched lepers, and forgiven enemies and died on a cross and risen from a grave. The calligraphy was beautiful, but the reality was more beautiful. The pointer was pointing to something the religion that created it could not fully see, and I walked away from that bookshop with tears behind my niqab, grateful for the beauty of Islam's aspiration, and heartbroken by the limitation of its reach. The double life began to unravel when I was 24. It started with my mother. She noticed changes in me that I thought I had hidden well. I was quieter during Islamic lectures. I was less enthusiastic during Ramadan. I spent more time alone in my room. I had stopped watching the religious programs that used to be our evening routine. Small changes. But my mother was observant in the way that all mothers are. She did not analyze. She felt. She asked me once, gently, if everything was okay. I said yes. She asked if I was struggling with something. I said no. She looked at me with those soft, intelligent eyes and said, "Noura, you can tell me anything." I almost broke in that moment. The urge to tell her everything, to collapse into her arms and say, "Mama, I found Jesus. I found love. I found freedom. I am alive for the first time," was almost irresistible, but I held back because I loved her too much to put her in that position. If she knew, she would be complicit, and complicity and apostasy in Saudi Arabia has consequences. The second crack came from my brother Faisal. He was the older of my two brothers, conservative, pious, protective in the way that Saudi men are protective, which often looks more like control than care. Faisal noticed that I had changed too, but his interpretation was different from my mother's. He did not think I was struggling. He thought I was being influenced by the internet, by Western ideas, by feminism, by the moral corruption that he believed was seeping into Saudi society through technology. He started monitoring me. Not obviously. He was not checking my phone or following me, but he was watching, making comments. "You seem different, Noura. What are you reading these days? Who are you talking to online?" Each question felt like a searchlight sweeping across a dark field, looking for the fugitive hiding in the grass. I became more careful. I changed my passwords. I added extra layers of encryption. I created decoy apps and decoy browsing histories. I was living like an intelligence operative, and the exhaustion of maintaining that level of secrecy was crushing. The third and final crack came from a source I did not expect. Myself. My own body betrayed me. The stress of the double life manifested physically. I lost weight. I could not sleep. I developed headaches that lasted for days. I had anxiety attacks, moments where my heart would race, my palms would sweat, and I would feel certain that I was about to be discovered. The fear that had been the foundation of my Islamic faith had been replaced by a different fear, the fear of being caught, and it was destroying me. I was falling apart. Slowly, quietly, invisibly. On the outside, I was still the good Saudi girl. On the inside, I was a person divided against herself, and the division was killing me. I told Hanan. Through our encrypted channel, I said, "I cannot do this anymore. I am breaking." She said, "Then it is time to leave." Leaving Saudi Arabia is not like leaving other countries. You do not just book a flight and go, especially if you are a woman. The guardianship system, which has been reformed in recent years, but was more restrictive when I was planning my departure, meant that I needed permissions, documentation, and a plan that accounted for the possibility of being stopped, questioned, or prevented from leaving. I will not describe the specific details of how I left, because the methods I used are still being used by others, and I will not compromise their safety. What I will tell you is that it took 6 months of planning, that it involved help from an international organization that assists persecuted believers, that Hanan was instrumental in connecting me with the right people, and that every single day of those 6 months, I woke up with the knowledge that I might not succeed, and that failure could mean imprisonment or death. During those 6 months, I had to make a decision about my family, the hardest decision of my life. I could tell them. I could sit my mother down and explain everything. I could give them the chance to say goodbye. I could let them process the information, and perhaps in time, come to terms with it. Or I could leave without telling them. Disappear. Leave a void where their daughter used to be, with no explanation, no goodbye, no closure. I chose the second option, not because I did not love them. I loved them with everything I had, but because telling them would put them in danger. If my family knew I had left Islam, they would be pressured by the community, by the religious authorities, possibly by the government to bring me back. They could face social ruin. My father's career could be affected. My mother could be ostracized. My brothers could be humiliated. And if they were found to have been complicit in my departure, if they had known and not reported it, the consequences for them could be severe. I chose their safety over my desire for closure. It was the most selfless thing I have ever done, and the most painful. I wrote a letter. Not an email, a physical letter, handwritten on paper, sealed in an envelope. I left it in my mother's drawer, in the spot where she kept her personal things, where I knew she would eventually find it, but not immediately. In the letter, I said that I loved them, that I was safe, that I had made a choice that they would not understand, that I was not running from them. I was running towards something. I asked them not to look for me. I asked them to forgive me. And I told my mother that the love she had given me was not wasted. It had made me strong enough to find my own path. The night before I left, I walked through our house one last time. It was after midnight. Everyone was asleep. I walked through the living room where we had watched television together, through the dining room where we had eaten my mother's cooking, past my sister Lama's room, where I could hear her quiet breathing through the door, past my parents' room, where my father's snoring was a sound I had heard every night of my life. I stood in the hallway, and I pressed my hand against the wall, just stood there, palm flat against the cool plaster, feeling the solidity of the house that had been my entire world, and I said goodbye, not out loud, just in my heart, a silent farewell to the girl I had been, and the life I was leaving. Then I picked up my bag, a single bag, carefully packed with only what was essential, and I walked out the front door. The Saudi sky was enormous, black velvet scattered with stars. The desert air was cool and dry and smelled like dust and distance. I stood on the threshold between my old life and my new one, and I took a breath that felt like the first breath I had ever taken, and I walked. The journey out of Saudi Arabia took several days. It involved multiple stages, multiple people, and more moments of terror than I care to remember. There were moments when I was certain I had been caught, moments when every shadow looked like an authority figure, and every car that slowed down looked like a police vehicle. But there were also moments of extraordinary grace, small mercies that appeared exactly when I needed them. A kind stranger who helped me at a border crossing without asking questions. A delay in a system that should have flagged me but did not. A connection that worked when it should not have. Each of these moments felt like a hand reaching down from heaven to steady me when I stumbled. I thought of the Israelites crossing the Red Sea. Not the dramatic Cecil B. DeMille version with walls of water on either side. The real version. The one that must have been terrifying, walking between walls of uncertainty, unable to see the other shore, trusting that the path would hold. That was my crossing, not dramatic, not cinematic, just a young woman with a bag and a prayer, putting one foot in front of the other in the dark. When I finally reached safety, when I stepped onto the soil of a country where apostasy was not a crime, where women were not property, where I could breathe without looking over my shoulder, I collapsed. Not dramatically, quietly. I sat down on a bench in an airport terminal, and I closed my eyes and I let the wave of relief wash over me. I was free. Not emotionally free. That would take years of healing. Not psychologically free. The trauma of what I had done, what I had left, what I had lost, would haunt me for a long time. But physically, legally, practically free. I was in a place where no one could arrest me for my beliefs, where no one could force me into an abaya, where I could say the name of Jesus out loud, in full voice, without fear. I said it, right there in the airport, quietly, but out loud. Jesus. Just his name, just the sound of it, formed by my lips and released into the air of a free country. And it was the most beautiful word I had ever spoken. I was received by a Christian organization that specializes in helping persecuted believers from the Middle East. They placed me with a host family in a northern European country, a couple named Eric and Maria who had hosted several converts before me. They were kind, patient, and wonderfully practical. Maria showed me how the washing machine worked. Eric taught me how to use public transportation. They gave me a room with a window that looked out onto a garden, and on the bedside table, there was a Bible in Arabic. The cultural adjustment was seismic. Everything was different. The weather, cold, gray, wet, the absolute opposite of the Saudi desert. The social norms, casual, egalitarian, informal, men and women interacting freely, as equals, without the elaborate system of segregation and hierarchy that had defined my entire life. The freedom, the staggering, almost overwhelming freedom of walking down a street with my face uncovered, my hair in the wind, my body belonging to me and no one else. And no, the first time I went outside without an abaya, without a niqab, without any covering except my own clothes, jeans and a sweater that Maria had given me, I stood on the doorstep for a full minute, unable to move, not because I was scared, because I was feeling the air on my face, the wind on my skin, the sun on my hair, sensations I had been denied for over a decade, simple, ordinary sensations that billions of women around the world experience every day without a second thought. For me, they were revelations. I walked down the street, slowly, deliberately, feeling every step, seeing everything with new eyes, the colors of the buildings, the shapes of the trees, the faces of the strangers who passed me and smiled or nodded, or simply went about their business, not caring that I was uncovered, not staring, not judging, not reporting. I reached a small park at the end of the street. There was a bench under a tree. I sat down and I looked up through the branches at the gray sky, and I cried. Not tears of sadness, tears of wonder. The kind of tears you cry when you see something so beautiful that your body does not know what else to do. I was outside, uncovered, alone, free, and no one was coming to stop me. This is what freedom feels like, I thought. Not the abstract political concept, not the philosophical debate, the physical, tangible, lived experience of being a person in the world without chains. This is it, and it is more beautiful than I imagined. Over the next year, I underwent a transformation that was as much external as internal. I learned the local language, slowly, with many mistakes, but with determination. Language is freedom in a very practical sense. Without it, you are dependent on others, unable to navigate, unable to express yourself. With it, you are autonomous. You are yourself. I found a church, a real church, with a building and a steeple and a congregation that sang at full volume on Sunday mornings. The first time I attended a service, I was overwhelmed. The music, the openness, the men and women worshiping side by side, the pastor, a woman, which was itself a revolution for someone from my background, standing at the pulpit and teaching with authority and warmth and humor. A woman teaching, a woman leading, a woman's voice filling a room without shame, without apology, without a man's permission. I wept through the entire service. The people sitting near me must have wondered what was wrong with the crying woman in the third row. But nothing was wrong. Everything was right. For the first time, everything was right. I joined a small group for converts from Muslim backgrounds. There were about 15 of us. Iranians, Afghans, Somalis, Iraqis, and one other Saudi. We met weekly. We studied the Bible together. We shared our stories. We prayed for our families back home. We cooked food from our countries and ate together and laughed together and cried together. In that group, I found my voice, not just my physical voice, although that too. I had spent my life speaking quietly, modestly, deferentially, and learning to speak at full volume, with confidence and passion, was its own kind of liberation. I found my intellectual voice, my spiritual voice, the voice that had been silenced not by my family or my government, but by a belief system that told me my thoughts were less valuable because they came from a woman's mind. I started writing, first in Arabic, then in English. As my language skills grew, I wrote about my journey, about the gilded cage, about the crack in the wall, about the night on the floor of my bedroom, about the crossing, about the first time I felt the wind on my face. I wrote with a rawness and an honesty that surprised me. I had not known I had so many words inside me, waiting to be released. I shared some of my writing online, under a pseudonym. The response was overwhelming. Messages from women in Saudi Arabia, in the Gulf states, in North Africa, in Southeast Asia. Women who recognized themselves in my words. Women who were living in their own gilded cages, feeling their own cracks forming. Women who whispered "me too" into the digital void and waited to hear an echo. I was their echo, and they were mine. Let me tell you about the cost, because I do not want to romanticize this story. It cost me everything. My family disowned me. After my mother found the letter, there was a period of frantic searching. Calls, inquiries, attempts to locate me through official channels. When they realized I had left the country, the grief turned to fury. Faisal, my older brother, sent me a message through a channel I had not secured well enough. The message said, "You have brought shame on this family. You are no longer our sister. If you come back, you will face what apostates deserve." My mother did not send a message. Her silence was louder than any threat. My father, according to information I received through a mutual contact, did not speak for 3 days after I left. He sat in his chair in the living room and stared at the wall. Then he went to the mosque and told people that I had gone abroad to study. A lie, a face-saving lie. In Saudi culture, a daughter's apostasy is so shameful that even acknowledging it is unbearable. It is easier to pretend I am studying in London than to admit I am worshipping in a church. My sister Lama, who was 19 when I left, called me once. Once. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. She said, "Why? Why did you leave us? How could you do this?" I tried to explain. I tried to tell her about the hunger, the thirst, the living water. But how do you explain a spiritual awakening to a 19-year-old girl who has never left the cage and does not know she is in one? She hung up. She has not called again. The cost was also psychological. I experienced depression, severe, clinical depression. The kind that makes getting out of bed feel like climbing a mountain. The kind that turns the world gray and flat and meaningless. The trauma of leaving my family, my country, my entire identity. It hit me months after my arrival, when the adrenaline of escape wore off and the reality settled in. I got help. The church connected me with a therapist who specialized in working with refugees and converts. She was gentle and skilled, and she did not try to fix me with platitudes. She let me grieve. She let me be angry. She let me cry for my mother, for my sister, for the girl I used to be, for the life I would never have. The healing was slow, like a bone that has been broken and needs to be set properly before it can mend. There were setbacks, dark days, days when I questioned everything, not my faith in Jesus, which remained solid even in the darkness, but my decision to leave. Was it worth it? Was the freedom worth the loneliness? Was the truth worth the pain? On those days, I would open my Bible and read the words of Jesus in Matthew 19. Everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life, 100 times as much. I could not see it yet, but I believed it. With the same faith that had carried me across the desert and out of the cage, I believed that one day, the gain would outweigh the loss, that the garden would be worth the leaving. I want to be honest with you right now. Telling this part of the story is hard. Every time I think about my mother's silence, about Lama's tears, about my father staring at a wall, it hurts. It will always hurt. I do not think that kind of pain ever fully goes away. It just becomes something you carry, like a scar that you learn to live with. But here is what I have learned about scars. They are proof that you survived. They are evidence that the wound did not kill you, And sometimes when you show your scars to someone else who is wounded, it gives them hope that they can survive too. If you are wounded right now, if you are carrying a pain that feels unbearable, you are not alone. You can survive this. And on the other side of the pain, there is a garden waiting for you. If this message matters to you, share this video. Someone needs to hear it today. I promised you at the beginning that I would tell you about the garden on the other side of the cage door. So let me tell you, 3 years have passed since I left Saudi Arabia. I am 26 now. I live in a European city that has become my home. I have an apartment, small but mine. I have a job in the tech industry, using the skills I developed at university. I speak 3 languages. I have friends. I have a church family. I have a life. But more than any of those external things, I have something I never had in the cage. I have myself. I know who I am now, not who my father wanted me to be, not who my culture defined me as, not who my religion prescribed. I know who Noura is. And Noura is a woman who thinks deeply, feels deeply, loves deeply, and is unafraid to exist in the world as a full, visible, uncovered human being. I am a graphic designer and web developer. I create beautiful things with my hands and my mind. My creativity, which was suppressed for so many years by the monotony of religious conformity, has erupted like a long dormant volcano. I paint, I design, I write. I make things that are colorful and bold and unapologetically alive. Every creation is an act of worship. Every pixel and every brushstroke is a thank you to the God who set me free. I have a community of friends who love me as I am, not as a trophy, not as a convert, not as a cause, as Noura. They know my story, and they honor it, but they also know that I am more than my story. I am a woman who loves coffee, who laughs too loudly, who cries at movies, who is learning to cook Swedish food with mixed results, who stays up too late reading novels, who dances in her kitchen to Arabic pop music because some things about your culture you never want to lose. I have a relationship with God that is nothing like the one I was taught. The old relationship was vertical, God above, me below, looking up with fear and performing rituals to earn his attention. The new relationship is intimate. It is a conversation. It is a walk. It is sitting in a garden with someone who knows everything about you and loves you anyway. I pray every day, but my prayers are nothing like the prescribed Arabic formulas of my Islamic past. My prayers are messy, honest, sometimes angry, sometimes joyful, sometimes wordless. I talk to God the way you talk to someone who is in the room with you, because he is. He is always in the room. He is always sitting next to me at the well, offering water. I worship in a church every Sunday, and I never take it for granted. Every Sunday morning, when I walk through those church doors with my face uncovered and my voice ready to sing, I remember the girl who whispered prayers in a dark bedroom in Riyadh. I remember the woman who walked through a desert to find this, and I sing louder, not to perform, not to earn, to celebrate, to say thank you, to tell the God who freed me that his freedom was worth everything it cost. 6 months ago, something happened that I was not expecting. I received a message through the encrypted app that I still use to stay in contact with the small network of Saudi believers. The message was from Lama, my little sister, the one who had called me crying and then gone silent for over 2 years. The message said, "Noura, I found your letter, not the one you left for Mama, the other one, the one hidden in your old journal." My heart stopped. I had forgotten about that. In my journal, tucked between the pages, I had left a small note, a note I had written months before I left, during one of my darkest moments. The note was a prayer for Lama. In it, I had written, "God, please do not let my little sister live her whole life in the cage without knowing there is a door. Show her the door. In your time, in your way. Show her." Lama's message continued. I read the prayer. I read the whole journal. And then I found the Bible app that you forgot to delete from the old tablet you left behind. I had forgotten. In the chaos of my departure, I had wiped my phone, but forgotten about the old tablet stored in a drawer. And Lama, curious, grieving, searching for clues about why her sister had vanished, had found it. She had found the journal, the prayer, the Bible app. She wrote, "I have been reading for 3 months. I have not told anyone. I do not understand everything, but I understand the part about the thirst and the living water, because I am thirsty too, Noura. I have been thirsty my whole life." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back, with trembling fingers, "I know, Habibti. I know you are thirsty. And the water is real. It is the most real thing in the world." We have been in contact since then, carefully, cautiously, through encrypted channels, with all the security measures that life in Saudi Arabia demands. Lama is asking questions, big, beautiful, dangerous questions. She is reading the Bible in secret, just as I did. She is discovering the God who sits at the well, just as I did. I do not know where her journey will lead. She may come to faith, she may not. She may leave Saudi Arabia one day. She may stay. I cannot control her path, but I can pray for it, and I do, every single day. I pray the same prayer I wrote in that journal years ago. Show her the door. God is faithful. He does not waste our prayers or our pain. The journal I left behind, the tablet I forgot to wipe, the prayer I wrote in desperation, God used all of it. He took my carelessness and turned it into a lifeline for my sister. That is the kind of God he is. A God who writes straight with crooked lines. A God who plants seeds in the cracks and grows gardens from the rubble. My name is Noura al-Harbi. I am 26 years old. I was born in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, in the heart of the Islamic world. I lived in a gilded cage for 23 years. I memorized Quran. I wore the abaya and the niqab. I was the perfect Muslim girl. And I am free. Not because I am strong. I am not strong. I am a young woman who misses her mother every single day, who cries when she hears Arabic music, who sometimes wakes up at night and reaches for the wall of her childhood bedroom before remembering that the bedroom is thousands of miles away. I am free because someone found me. In the darkness of a Saudi night, on the floor of a bedroom in a gilded cage, someone found me. He sat at my well. He offered me water, and the water was living, and it has never run dry. If you are in a cage, any kind of cage, I want you to know that there is a door. You may not see it yet. It may be hidden behind tradition, behind fear, behind the expectations of people you love, but it is there. And on the other side of it, there is a garden. I found the garden. It is real. It is beautiful. It is where I was always meant to be. And there is room for you. Let me tell you one more thing about the garden. The garden is not a destination. It is a daily discovery. Every morning I wake up in my apartment, and I have a choice. I can live in gratitude, or I can live in grief. Most days, I choose gratitude. Some days, the grief chooses me, and on those days, I let it come. I do not fight it. I sit with it. I let it wash through me like a wave, and when it passes, and it always passes, the gratitude is still there, solid and patient, waiting for me on the other side. I have learned that healing is not a straight line. It is a spiral. You circle back to the same pain, the same memories, the same ache. But each time you circle back, you are a little higher, a little stronger, a little more certain that the pain is not the whole story. The pain is real, but so is the garden. And the garden is growing. I planted flowers on my apartment balcony last spring. Real flowers. Geraniums and lavender and a small rosemary bush. I water them every morning. I watch them grow. And every time I see a new bud opening, I think about myself. I think about the girl in the cage who could not see the door. And I think about the woman on the balcony, watering flowers in the morning light, face uncovered, heart open, alive. That woman is me, and she is a miracle. Not because she is special, but because she is free. And freedom, I have learned, is the most ordinary miracle in the world. It happens every time someone dares to walk through the door. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. I know I asked a lot of your time, but this story needed to be told, and you gave it a place to land. That means more to me than you know. If you were moved by Noura's journey, please do these things for me. Leave a comment. Tell me what part of this story spoke to you. Tell me if you are watching from a country where faith is dangerous. Tell me if you are watching from a place of freedom and you want to pray for those who are not yet free. Every comment is a signal that these stories matter. Share this video, copy the link and send it to someone. You do not know who is watching in secret tonight, behind a locked door, with earbuds in, afraid to breathe too loudly. This video could be the crack in their wall. And subscribe. This channel is a garden. Every testimony we share is a flower in that garden. Your subscription helps us grow. And the more we grow, the more people we reach. And the more people we reach, the more cages open. Until next time, be free, be brave, be loved. My name is Noura, and this is my testimony.